what's up weirdos? I'm Felicia and I like scary movies, and if you know me or you've been on this channel before, you may know that there is a special place in my heart for spooky kids movies. Now, when I heard they were remaking The Witches, I was honestly excited. I'm not someone that's totally against remakes. Sometimes they turn out really well. This movie is, of course, based on the 1983 novel by Roald Dahl, The Witches. And then the first film adaptation is the well-beloved 1990 film, directed by Nicholas Roeg, and of course, starring Angelica Huston, my fave. Now, the original Witches film terrified the children of the 90s, though I actually didn't see it until I think I was a teenager. It's a pretty scary kids movie. Roald Dahl is famous for not being afraid to scare children. Many of his books inspired some of my favorite spooky kids movies: James and the Giant Peach, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, Matilda, which is like my all-time fave. And I do want to start this review by saying that I have not rewatched the 1990 The Witches because I wanted to let this movie kind of stand on its own and not be comparing it too much. So I've waited to watch it, though I definitely am gonna watch it sometime before Halloween. By the way, happy week of Halloween, guys. I cannot believe we are already here. I cannot believe today is day 25 of my 31 days of Halloween. It's kind of blowing my mind. My mind is mush, but we're almost there, baby. Okay, now let's really get into it now. The Witches 2020 just came out on HBO Max. By the way, if HBO Max does not get a Roku channel soon, I'm gonna freak out. I'll do it. This was directed by Robert Zemeckis, who has brought us some pretty famous movies such as Forrest Gump, Death Becomes Her, What Lies Beneath. And this movie was co-written with him, Kenya Barris, and a channel fave, Guillermo del Toro. Now let's hop into a little bit of plot, as it is a bit changed from the book and original film. Set in 1968 Alabama, an orphan boy stumbles across a conference of witches while staying with his grandmother at a hotel. He gets transformed into a mouse by the Grand High Witch, and he discovers her plan to turn all children into vermin and stomp them out. He and his grandma, with the help of some other children turned into mice, must foil the witch's scheme and kill the Grand High Witch. Now let's start with what I liked about this movie. It was an enjoyable watch. It was fun. It had its light moments, its sad moments, its scary moments. It kind of gave you a well-rounded kids movie in some ways. I liked that our little boy, hero boy, played by Jazir Bruno, had a solid backstory of tragedy, how he came into his grandmother's care. You saw him kind of go through some of that grief at the beginning of the movie and how him and his grandmother become very close. I enjoyed all that. I thought it was great. I enjoyed the overall aesthetic of the movie, the color palette, the costumes, the sets. I thought it was all very theatrical and very whimsical, which is kind of what I want in a kids movie. And I'll say, though I said I wasn't going to mention the original too much, here I am. It definitely doesn't have the same terrifying scare factor as the original film, but it does have some intense scary moments. Particularly, there is one effect that's used a couple of times with the witch's arms that is very Guillermo del Toro, and I thought was like pretty freaky and cool, and so I liked that. And of course I love Octavia Spencer because she's just a dream. I've never seen anything that she was in that I didn't kind of love. So I'm a huge fan of Ma, by the way. And now let's get into what I didn't like or what I had little issues with. So Chris Rock plays the adult version just in voiceover of Hero Boy. And his voiceover feels very out of place, almost like a different movie to everyone else. It definitely feels a little distracting and not the voice of the boy that we meet throughout the movie. Does that make sense? Like, they feel like very different people. And then in that same vein, Anne Hathaway, though I think she's having a great time and she's kind of fabulous in some ways, also seems like she's kind of in a different movie than everyone else. A lot of the other characters, particularly, you know, the grandmother and the little boy, the hotel staff, everything kind of feels rooted in realism in a way. And then when Anne Hathaway comes on, she feels like she's playing a cartoon character. And I'm not necessarily saying it's a bad performance, but she does feel quite different than the other witches in the film. But she is the High Witch, so I don't know. High Grand Witch? I don't know. I guess at times I just found myself being like, wow, Anne Hathaway is really going for it. And then I think one of my biggest complaints about this movie is that I wanted practical effects, or it doesn't even have to be. I wanted effects that felt a little grittier, because of course the witches from the 1990 film are so horrifying. The practical effects of those heads are just terrifying. I mean, they are literally like actually made for nightmares. And as soon as I saw the trailer for this 2020 version, I knew I was going to be disappointed in that aspect. It's a lot of CGI. And I feel like with the CGI, except for the arm thing I mentioned, it never gets to that terrifying moment that I want it to get to. Like Angelica Huston in the original has like a full mask on that she pulls down. Anne Hathaway just has like a wig, and so she's still, even though she's a monster, she's still very beautiful in ways. And I just wanted more of like a hideous witch in this movie. I wanted Anne Hathaway to really get down and ugly at a certain point, and she never really does. This is going back to voiceover for a second, but another actor that I found very distracting was Kristen Chenoweth. She plays another little girl that was turned into a mouse, so it's all voiceover. And I just was like, this is not the voice of a child, and it feels strange somehow. And I looked it up, I was like, oh, it's like Kristen Chenoweth. And it just, something about that voiceover also felt very distracting to me. Like, I really wish they had had a child do it. And now I'm just gonna go through some interesting things I found on the internet about this movie. So first of all, Guillermo del Toro expressed interest in making this adaptation back in 2008, actually, as a stop motion film, which he hasn't done in a while. And I think that would have been cool. I don't actually think it was right for this particular story, but who am I to say? And the next thing, I just have to read this straight off the IMDb trivia page. Is this true? It says, during filming, there was an incident on set. A stabbing occurred between a stagehand and a rigger, where one of the men sustained a neck injury. They do not say if this was an intentional stabbing or an accidental stabbing. I'm gonna see if I can further investigate. Oh my gosh. June 2019, Variety posted, crew member stabbed on set of Anne Hathaway's The Witches in England. The Hertfordshire Constabulary, that's the most British thing I've ever heard in my life, said in a statement that the victim was hospitalized and his alleged attacker was arrested. The two men were believed to have known each other. Police were called around 12:35 p.m. to reports of an incident at the Warner Brothers studio production facility in Levingston. One man sustained a neck injury and was taken to the hospital. I mean, this is wild. Yeah, and this was summer of 2019 that I guess they were filming. I mean, that is freaking crazy. Oh, something else, it's on the IMDb, but I actually thought about it when I was watching the movie. There's a scene between Anne Hathaway and Stanley Tucci where they're talking to each other on a balcony, and I was just laughing because I was like, oh my god, Devil Wears Prada, these two characters like grown up or something, now behaving in this way, talking to each other on this balcony. I just started cracking up. It was so funny to see them in a scene together again. Also, Stanley Tucci's fine in this film. I always love him. I wish he had more to do in this movie. But he's also like playing the hotel manager, so I don't know how involved that character can be. But I think he's fabulous. And I think he's also really great for kids movies because he's very theatrical. Also on here it says Jennifer Lopez was briefly set to play the Grand High Witch. And dang it, I'm just saying that would have probably been really good. Probably would have been really good, but that happens all the time. There's like a million people attached before anything's announced. I mean, we've seen it before. And that's everything I found on the internet. So I guess my overall thoughts are that I wish it was darker. I wish the effects were either practical or just less pretty. Some of the voiceover are a little distracting, but overall I had a good time watching it. It felt like a fun kids movie. I recommended it to my brother to show my nephews. I think they'll really enjoy it. And I think kids probably will enjoy it. I think it's a difficult thing for us who have seen the 1990 film to be comparing them. So, but I'm hoping kids that are watching it right now have a good time and are scared silly. That's all we can hope for, right? Okay. I think that's it for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. If you haven't yet, please hit that subscribe button. We're getting really close to 5,000 subs, and I will see you in my next video. Have a nice scream. Bye.